Okay, I am here at the Little Bighorn Little Bighorn Battlefield, if you will, National Monument, and get a good view behind me of those yellow fields that I was talking about earlier on the video. But here, a bunch of grave sites of the people, I guess, that were fallen here on the battlefield. There's a 5-mile auto tour up around the road up there. I may walk a little bit, but I may try to yeah, there's a trail going out that way. Let me get some of the graveyard while we're started out here. Not sure what this is.
Ladies and gentlemen, in just 5 minutes, the range of presentation on the Battle of the Bighorn will begin at 11 o'clock outside of the covered patio. Of course, lap details when you get to the Memorial of the Bighorn fight by a ranger. 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, well, let's go 5 minutes. We'll go listen to that, and then we'll come back to the battlefield in the house over there.
Welcome to Little Bighorn Battlefield National Monument. We're going to get started right away. As I look at the crowd, I have a little meter in my head. I automatically can determine with great accuracy the age of the audience, the average age of the audience, and I'm looking right now, and it's 61.3. Okay? And as I look around here, I see a little pipsqueak right here. I don't see any more pipsqueaks. There's one over there. So, we're going to have a little fun with this. First of all, I'm going to bet you a lot of money, because I have a lot of money working this job. I'm going to bet you that 80 to 90% of you have never been here in your whole life. Would you raise your hand if you've never been here? Put it way up. Now look around. I'm spot on. I always am. It never changes. It's always the same. Now we're going to flip that statistic. Except for these two little pipsqueaks here, okay, there's not a person in this audience, even though you've never been here, most of you, who've never heard of the Battle of the Little Bighorn, and George Armstrong Custer, and there's another pipsqueak, and Crazy Horse and Custer, because we learned about these things when we were in elementary school, because that was part of the curriculum in those days. It's not anymore. I asked a kid 2 weeks ago, I said, son, 14 years old, can you tell me about Pearl Harbor? He said, well, I think it was a jewelry store. That's sad.
Yes, it is.
That's sad. We're losing our heritage. That's sad. They're not teaching these things in schools anymore. And by the way, I'm a retired teacher, as I told you. I know because I watched the curriculum change. It went from teaching hardcore history, very important subject, for years. Now it's watered down, it's politically correct. We're losing it, folks. So keep that in mind, because that's important. If you don't know where you've been, you're not going to know where you're going. Which brings me to this point. Almost everybody in this audience has heard of George Armstrong. There's a little bit about this story, but that's dangerous, because it's the most mythologized, twisted, warped, misconceived piece of American military history we have. Folks come from all over the world, 400,000 of them every year. They come through the front gate. They already have a preconceived idea, attitude, perception, belief about what happened here. And most of them are unfortunately heavily skewed by a couple of primary sources. One, bad movies. 29 movies made, 28 of them are junk. There's only one good one, Son of the Morning Star. The rest of them are garbage. We're going to talk about movies a little bit. There's also 3,000 books written about this battle, more than Gettysburg. lot of them are skewed. In fact, some of the authors who wrote books on this battle never came here. Can you imagine that? So what we have is we've got a population of folks who come here, but they really don't know what happened. Now, what gives me the capacity, the right, or maybe the arrogance to stand up here and say, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to give you the most accurate story, most accurate assessment you're ever going to get. It's pretty arrogant. But I'll tell you why I'm going to do it. Because I have access to some things you guys don't have access to. Now, I will be honest with you. I've probably read 400 books. I've studied it for 35 years. But put that aside. I'm also a park ranger here. And I get to do something you can't do unless you go through special channels. And I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that I can walk all over this battlefield. And I can look at the land, and I can look at the terrain, and I can read books, and I can go out there and say, well, that makes sense, but that doesn't make any sense. I can do that, and I've done it for a long time. Also, we have access in our archive to a lot more information from eyewitnesses that saw all of this that you don't have access to. Yeah, but Ranger Adelson, I don't, what do you mean eyewitnesses? This was Custer's last stand. Everybody was destroyed. That's one of those powerful myths. It's not true. First of all, there's 1,700 eyewitness survivors to this battle. But nobody wanted to pay any attention to them for a long time. That's the Red Man. The Red Man saw everything that went on here. We've got hundreds and hundreds of accounts of what those people saw. Nobody wanted to listen. We also have 350 men that survived 5 miles to the south of us who came down in the aftermath. 350 soldiers survived this battle. Well, that's going to shake some people up because that's not what they were told. So we stand up here, we got a lot of accounts. Now let's get to the Red Man's account. 1876. If you were a warrior in this battle, after the fight, your biggest fear was getting hung. Okay? But then a little while thereafter, those who began to say some things, they learned this. The white man didn't want to hear anything about the truth. What they wanted to hear was that Custer died on top of that hill, blazing away with his pistols, fighting for America and justice and manifest destiny and the American dream. We call that propaganda today. That's what people wanted to hear. That's what Americans wanted to hear because that's how it was perceived. That's how it was presented. The victors tell the tale. But we wanted to hear what the Indian had to say. But then, slowly that began to change. And scholars and historians and archivists and hobbyists began to interview primary characters that were involved in this fight. Gall, Crow King, Crazy Horse, Low Dog, Sitting Bull. I could go on and on. Those accounts were recorded. But they still weren't given a lot of credence. Now, if you were a prosecuting attorney and you were going to try a case, if you were going to try O.J. Simpson, and I'm not trying to be a racist or politically incorrect or correct, I'm just using him as an example. If you were going to try O.J. Simpson and you had 1,700 eyewitnesses, would you ignore them? No, you wouldn't. That's what's going on here. But eventually those accounts began to surface. But it was slow, and it was long in coming. If you came to this park in 1960, the park ranger would stand up here, and he would talk about Custer and Benteen and Reno and Last Stand Hill and the desperate fight. He wouldn't mention Indians too much. He wouldn't certainly bore into their accounts like I'm going to do today. That didn't happen until the 70s started to take over, and then things began to change. But when they really began to change, and it all made sense, was an event that occurred here in 1983, in August. A casual tourist throws a cigarette butt out the window and burns up the park, right down to the ground. Nothing but cooked, blackened soil. And some park rangers decide to take a walk. They walk out onto the battlefield. They begin to find some of these. Now, if this cartridge case could talk, I'd be out of a job. Some of these. Some of these. Some of these. And buttons, and rings, and watches, and insignia, and bits, and bridles, and anything metal. The archaeologists descend on this field like white on rice. And they get their buzzing metal detectors out over that ground, and ultimately they come out with 5,500 to 6,000 artifacts. And all of a sudden, they began to see patterns. And I'll show you. I want you to put your CSI cap on for a minute. Not literally, but I'm going to use this figuratively. We found 17 cartridge cases here. These kind of cartridge cases. Military round, fired out of a Springfield carbine. It's a 45-55. It's got a very unique firing pin signature on the back. It's like a human fingerprint. You can't reproduce it. So we got 17 cartridge cases here. We got 8 here. We got 7 here. We got 9 here. What might we have? What else is it called militarily? Not a battle line. A skirmish line. We have a skirmish line here because we have military evidence. Literally, we got a line. Do warriors fight in lines? No, they don't. They don't fight in lines. They charge, they fall back, they retreat, they hide, they ambush, they decoy. They fight with what kind of tactics? Guerrilla tactics. Gee whiz. You mean like the Viet Cong did?
None of that walk all the way up around was recording, so I'm going to have to walk back around and do it all again. Got this kind of dug down in a little pit with stone work all around. It's very pretty. Try this again. Iron statue, one horse leading the other, tails tied onto the other horse. Went through here once, my camera wasn't on.
Oh.
So,
That won't work.
no, so got to take the trip around again. out there where people fell. That's the Little Bighorn River down there. In memory of officers and soldiers who fell near this place fighting with the 7th U.S. Cavalry against Sioux Indians on the 25th and 26th of June, 1876. One placard right there in the middle with black lettering on it. George Armstrong Custer, Lieutenant Colonel, U.S. Cavalry, fell here. As the ranger said, they're not sure if his remains are buried on this hill or if they're in Washington, Arlington. See the markers out there where a lot more people fell. Obviously, as a soldier and a warrior myself, this gives me chills just thinking about how tough it was back then. Whether right or wrong, it's, you know, I'm not here to debate that, but it's our history, and this is what happened. Problem is, people tend to forget history, tend to repeat it, so let's not forget what happened here. Like I said, as a soldier and a warrior myself, we want to remember what went on here so we won't repeat it. The mistakes our government made. You can't blame the soldiers, the warriors. You can't blame the soldiers on either side, the Indian side or the American side, but the government, you know, at the time screwed up. Let's not forget that so we don't do it again, and make the best of, you know, the life and situation that we have. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, but the camera wasn't on, that cemetery down there is a national cemetery. But it's not for people who died there at the Little Bighorn. It's soldiers and stuff who died at various other conflicts are buried here. But they closed the National Cemetery here, what did he say, in the late 70s. So no more burials up here, but probably going to walk down and see what that house is about. But other than that, that's probably about it for this place. So, I'm going to turn you off for now. If there's anything interesting at the house, I'll get some pictures of that. Otherwise, we're out of here. Till later. Fill out. I was just in the visitor center, and they've got a lot of placards and memorabilia and artifacts and stuff like that, but it's too dark in there. It's too dimly lit. Neither camera would really pick up anything, and I didn't want to use flash in there and be disrespectful. So I didn't film anything inside the visitor center. Let me take a walk over the house, see if there's anything interesting. If not, we'll be out of here. Out.